Hello, everybody, and welcome to Horsehead Weekly. This week we will be doing the Week 1 Power Rankings. This will be a weekly bit. Typically, for those of you who haven't been keeping up with what I do, if you're new to the league, my weekly rankings aren't just with the rankings. I also will have like a little bit of like a, I don't know, like a little bit of a bit before it where I'll either analyze trades that have been made, I'll look at who's been picked up on waivers, how much they were paid for, and I'll just kind of just throw something else there randomly too. Kind of look at some people's hot takes throughout the year, or I'll do something like midway through the season where I'll look back at the draft and be like, oh, so who did actually draft well now that we actually have some results to look at. And yeah, I'll later on in the season I'll start breaking down playoffs as they're coming up. I'll break down some matchups, have a game of the week, stuff like that. But because this is the first week, we really still don't have a lot to go on. One game has been played, so all we know is that Julio Jones catches the football a lot, and that's kind of it. That's just the way it goes as of right now. So I'm just going to start off with my Week 1 rankings. This is for rest of season. So if I say your team's really good, and you're like, oh, but I have bad matchups this week, well, it's because I'm looking at the entirety of the season, not just on this particular week. So let's start off with number 12, Nick. So going into Wednesday, Nick was naturally a lot higher up on the board, but he had a couple of things happen over the last few days. One, Le'Veon Bell has decided that he just wants to not play football for like 9 to 10 weeks. I don't know if this is actually how it's going to work out, if he's going to actually sit out this whole time, or if he's just going to sit out for a week or two, and then when he notices that the paychecks aren't coming in and they're not going to pay him and no, they're not going to trade him, then that'll be that. Another option could be he could get traded and suddenly he could have the best running back on a really good team. If someone's looking to make a big playoff run this year and they just are missing that one thing at running back, then maybe they'll make a trade for him and pay him the money he wants. Who knows? But for right now, his team is just kind of scary because he is plugging in James Conner, who, yeah, he has a great story, and he's done great things. Love Connor. However, the issue becomes he's not Le'Veon Bell, and you used a first round pick on Le'Veon Bell. The first overall pick, and he's gone. Um, and that's just hard to recover from right now. I mean, yes, you have good players on your team, who you can put in it to kind of soften the blow, but just looking at this team, you're just missing that. You just have a massive hole at RB1 right now without Le'Veon Bell. And yeah, McCaffrey's good, but he's a low end running back one at best. At this moment, at least, he could become top five later in the season, but I'm looking at him as 10 through 12, and that's not a great thing to have at your running back one, especially when your running back two is a guy who is a complete unknown, a really old guy, or a guy who has a broken finger. Like you literally only have Christian McCaffrey, James Conner, Adrian Peterson, and Rashad Penny right now. That's it. Just four people. That's all you have in your entire team right now. That is not good. You can't sustain yourself on that. So yeah, that's just not good, and you know, good luck making it work later on. Hopefully Bell comes back and stuff, and it shouldn't be overlooked. Keanu Neal is a really good safety, and he is out for the rest of the season after what people were saying was probably a minor injury, but and even the coach was like, yeah, it's probably something minor. We're just gonna send him to an MRI just to make sure, and then now he's gone. So yeah, that puts Nick at number 12. Moving on to number 11, we have Doug. So the reason that I have Doug at number 11 is because his lineup is one of either players that I go, man, that's a good player, or I go, man, that's a player I don't want starting on my fantasy football team. And you know what? I don't know what he's going to come out with. I mean, you have Aaron Rodgers, Dalvin Cook, Julio Jones, Travis Kelce. Like, those four players are all insane. They are just plug them in and just let them rip for the rest of the season. You don't even have to think about moving them in and out of your lineup for matchups or anything. They're going to make you those points every single week. However, Duke Johnson is in what could become a three-headed giant if Chubb ends up becoming, decent. Now, yes, he is going to be the pass catching back, but Hyde has the ability to catch the ball. Chubb has the ability to catch the ball, and they added a bunch of weapons this year, in their passing game. So I'm not sure that Duke's going to get that big role. Plus, the reason Duke was so good in the past was because Cleveland was just terrible, absolutely hot garbage. And if they're going to stop being hot garbage, well, then guess what? Suddenly you have this thing happening where they're not going to throw the ball as much. So that's something I'm worried about. Brandon Cooks for the Rams, another person I'm worried about. When you have Gurley, you want to just hand the ball off to Gurley or make short passes to Gurley. He's so good. And then you have him also competing against Kupp, who, Goff has shown an affinity for. And you also have Woods there, who, again, an affinity has been established between those two guys. So I'm not entirely sure that this is somebody who I want as my starting wide receiver too. Now, you do have Geronimo Allison on your bench, and you have Robbie Anderson. And yes, one of these three is probably going to become somebody who you can probably play as a wide receiver too. But then when you get to the flex, you're playing another one of those guys. And you have, you have a handcuff down there. You have Devontae Parker, who I think is garbage. And you have Sony Michel, who is going to take 5, 6, 7, 8. Who knows how long it's going to take for him to take over the role in New England. And yeah, he's a dynamic back and he could be great, but I feel like you're probably putting him at RB2 once he starts going. And then Duke Johnson's going to slot into your flex, and that's fine, but I'm not excited about it. I don't know. When I look at this team, I just think to myself, Doug, you need to fill in some of those gaps in your lineup. Now, I could be completely wrong. Next week, I could be sitting here saying, man, Duke Johnson had quite the game, huh? And that Brandon Cooks guy, he's really good now. I don't think I'm going to be, but I could be. So for right now, I'm putting Doug on the low end, and I think he's just going to kind of hang out there for a little bit, and we'll see what he does. Next up, we have Matt S., the first of those brothers. And with his team, I think is number 10 right now. But even if I just close my eyes and didn't pay attention to football for 4 weeks, this team would just move up in the rankings because it has Mark Ingram on it, and he's just, he's just waiting his time, and then he's just gonna burst onto the scene at the end of his suspension and just, I think he's gonna come back and be a top 10 back. I don't see any reason why not. For now, though, he doesn't really exist in the NFL, so kind of have to ignore him. But looking at the rest of his team, especially his starters, he has, good players. I mean, Antonio Brown, that's a great player. Larry Fitzgerald, every single season he gets drafted in the, a round or two later than he ends up performing as. As you can see by the number right there, he was the 8th best wide receiver last year. Averaged 12, almost 13 points per game. The dude's ageless, and he's going to have, pretty good quarterback play this year, assuming that everyone stays healthy. So, when I look at this, I see a very good wide receiver in 1 and 2. At running back, you have James White, maybe Mike Gillislee if he ends up becoming the guy who's the number 2 behind Kamara. You can make those guys work as your running back 2, and I think that Jordan Howard's he's a low-end running back 1, high-end running back 2, but he's not great. You don't want that to be the thing. It's the same thing with Nick and Christian McCaffrey. You don't want Howard to be your number one. But unlike with Nick, you have a solid wide receiver one that you're just like, yes, this is a great guy. You also have Kirk Cousins on your team, who I think is going to be, you know, sneaky top five. I think a lot of people are probably, well, maybe not sneaky top five. I think a lot of people are probably saying, oh, yeah, he's top five. Duh, what are you talking about? Um, but I don't know. I just feel like in a year without any big injuries to like, your Rodgers and Watsons and stuff like last year, Kirk finished fifth, and I think this year he can still finish fifth, even with a bunch of people coming back into the top. So I don't know. So you're probably thinking, well, you're saying all these really nice things about my team. Why am I in 10th? I have a lot of issues with everything from wide receiver to down on your team. Um, if you let's move Mark Ingram up to running back two, you have James White, who yeah he's fine filling in as a running back, and then you have Corey Clement. That's not somebody I'm really excited about, and Mike Gillislee, who was absolutely trash garbage last year, and basically was willing. They're just sitting there waiting to cut him at the end of the season because they just hated his guts. I don't know what he did to Belichick, but it did not make him happy. And then as wide receiver, you have Robert Woods, who he's gonna be a guy, but he's not in that he's in that him and Jordy and Crowder, they're all in that realm of they're bench guys, and that's where they live. But then I look up at the flex, and I see you have Marvin Jones there, and I am not a fan of Marvin Jones this year. Yes, he was good last year. Yes, he's put up big games and big numbers and all that. But when I look at Marvin Jones, I see a guy who's going to get pushed out. When you have Stafford throwing the ball to as many people as he's going to be throwing the ball to, with Carrion coming in and reducing the number of throws that are going to be made, when you have Galladay and Tate running around catching the ball, I just think that something has to give there. And yes, it is an offense that throws a billion times a year, but I think Marvin Jones is going to be the one who ends up losing in this. I mean, that's just my opinion, and we'll see how that goes. And then we get down to your linebackers and defensive back and your IDP. There are also people I'm not too excited about. I mean, I don't think Zach Brown is going to be worth the price you paid for him. Just because I think the position is kind of flush with talent, and Zach Brown is not one of those like Luke Kuechly type players where he's just he's just above everybody else because he's just that talented. LaMarcus Joyner, another person who I'm just not excited about. I think that what hurts him more than anything is the fact that he's going to be on a team that I think is going to be ahead a lot, and they're going to be doing a lot of clock killing later on in the game, and that means he's just going to get less looks against the opposing offense, and that means less tackles, and I think that's going to hurt him. And then Quan Alexander's again, he's just a guy. I'm not going to really go into him, but that's my thoughts on Medes. I think there's definitely a bit of a, Nick and Doug are definitely near the bottom, but I think 10 through, 8, maybe 6, they're all really close to each other, and all depend on how things break over the next, couple weeks. I'm sure these guys will move around a lot. Moving on to number 9, we have Steve. Now, Steve has a very interesting team, and it has a lot of things to like and a lot of things to not like. Number 1, it has Todd Gurley. In most other fantasy football leagues, he would be crying over Bell, but here he got lucky and he has Gurley. He also, has Mike Evans and Stephon Diggs, who are all, really good players. He has a top 5 tight end in Greg Olsen. But, from there, it kind of sputters a little bit. Isaiah Crowell is somebody a lot of people are high on. They're saying, oh my God, a Crow's going to be good. Crow's going to be good, blah, 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 blah. However, I'm not big on Crow just because he's on the Jets, and if they're going to be starting a rookie or they're going to be starting, people are going to key into that and they're going to say, this is somebody who's going to be able to, they're going to be giving the ball to and doing nonsense with. I'm just not a fan of Crow. I feel like he's not going to be as good as all the hype is with him. Um, so yeah, he's just someone I'm not big on, and also Matt Ryan. As we saw it last night, he still is allergic to Julio Jones in the end zone. If I had someone who was Julio Jones on my football team and I was in the red zone, I would just say, just go over to the point where I get the money happens and the points happen, and I just throw the ball at him and say, good luck. And I feel like that's the thing you got to do, but he wasn't able to make that work. Plus, in this watching the game last night could have entirely been just Philly being good. His offensive line was not giving him a lot of time to do anything. He really was kind of getting stuck and eaten up. So yeah, that's gonna be tough for you. Moving on down, Randall Cobb. I think Randall Cobb could be a wide receiver 2 this year. I think he could definitely move up into that wide receiver 2 range, and he could be really cool to watch do that because you have Aaron Rodgers back, and Rodgers has been able to support 2 top level wide receivers every year. But we'll see what happens. Also, apparently people are on Slack, but they're not willing to come watch. So it's cool, guys. I get it. I get it. Um, but moving on to other things, like you got 2 tight ends. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think anyone's going to want to trade for Kyle Rudolph. You might get some people to buy Greg Olsen off of you. I know that I'd be interested if the price was low, but I'm definitely not somebody who's like dying to get him. You also have, a bunch of wide receivers on, just kind of hanging out on your bench. I'm, of the mind that if you have Evans and Diggs, you don't need a bunch of them, but if you have Crowell as your number 2 running back, you should have a bunch of them. Now, you have good ones. You have Blount, who, he could just be the guy in Detroit and make Kerryon Johnson pickers look silly, like myself. You could also have Peyton Barber go off, and he could just be the guy, and they could say Ronald Jones who for the next 2 seasons, and then cut him, and then he'll just be a journeyman and disappear from the league because he's definitely not looked that good. But I don't know. I'm just not sold on your team right now. But hey, you got a lot of good players. It's a lot of people with a lot of hype behind them. So you can definitely prove me wrong. At number 8, I have Malcolm. And with this, it really comes down to 2 people on your team, Patrick Mahomes and Carlos Hyde. Yes, Carlos Hyde is a good football player. Yes, Carlos Hyde has the ability to just change the game. Because in Cleveland at least, because I think he is better than Crowell. However, I'm afraid of him. I don't know why I'm afraid of Hyde. I just have something in my gut is telling me that he's going to be, he'll have a couple good weeks, a couple bad weeks, and then he'll just kind of end up being the guy who comes in occasionally for, to make give Chubb a rest or something. I don't know. That's just my feelings on it. You also have people like Patrick Mahomes, who I mentioned earlier. Yes, he played 1 game last year, and yeah, he looked fine in it, but I don't think you want to put all your eggs in this one basket. I mean, it's a guy who's basically a rookie. He sat behind a guy and had practiced for a whole year and to get used to the offense and everything. But man, I'm just not sold on Patrick Mahomes right now. I know he has a lot of weapons around him and everything, but geez, I'm just afraid of him. I'm so scared. I'm yawning. I don't know. I just feel like he's going to end up being a player who finds himself behind a lot as a quarterback, because I don't think their defense is going to be as good this year. They're going to end up finding themselves behind, and if he doesn't have that ability to just be super clutch, he could be one of those guys who puts up, 15, 20 points over the first 50 minutes of a game, but in that last 10 minutes, he'll throw 2 picks because he's trying to play from behind or something. Um, and maybe I'm overselling it. Maybe it's more like a 12 to 16 points over the first 50 minutes, and those last 2 minutes he'll just get -4 points because he'll just have to throw the ball and he just won't be able to make it happen. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I do like, your wide receivers. I think they're great. I think Fournette and Freeman both have a lot of talent, and they could both be very good. I like that you have Coleman because as soon as Freeman goes down, Coleman's just boom. He's the guy. He's going to be great for you. But again, another issue that I have is you're carrying 2 tight ends, but then I look at who your tight end is, and it's Jordan Reed, and it's like, well, yeah, of course you're going to carry 2 tight ends for a little bit. But as soon as a big injury hits or a big guy hits on the waivers, how long does it take before Trey Burton becomes the guy who you cut if Jordan Reed's good? And Trey Burton maybe, isn't the guy, who everyone thinks he's going to be for the first couple weeks. Like, how long does that survive for? So I don't know. That's just my feelings on it, on that. For Malcolm, moving on to Dave because I'm realizing I'm talking way, 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 way too much. Uh, Dave is the first team that I think I look at and I'm like, I can see one hole in the starting lineup. Everyone else I'm looking at and I'm saying, man, you got a lot. You got at least 2 positions I'm looking at that I'm a little bit afraid of, and I'm really kind of sketchy on a lot of the stuff that you're going on. I only really see one spot on your starting lineup, Dave, that I don't like, and I feel like this is the beginning of the next tier with Dave, and that's Allen Robinson. I mean, you have 3 great running backs on your team. I think if Jamal Williams ends up becoming the guy and holding the job, I think he's going to be really, really good. You also have Jay Ajayi sitting on your bench, who just got 1 billion points last night for you, and I think that's going to be. I don't think he's going to be on the bench for long for you. You got Marlon Mack, who is definitely a guy who's going to be able to do good stuff this year if Indianapolis becomes a team that can run the ball. Uh, I mean, you have a great running back room. It's just, Thielen is going to be a low end guy, and you have Allen Robinson, who I think is going to be, I'm just not sold on him. He had one really good season, and now he's on a team that threw the ball like 10 times a game last season. He's on a team that has a bunch of other players, including, as mentioned in the previous slide, Trey Burton. So I'm just not sold on Allen Robinson. I could be completely blown away this year if they end up coming out, all systems go, let's throw the ball around, make Trubisky earn his keep. Yeah, no, that'd be great. And at that point, Allen Robinson's going to be a steal, and he's going to be a great guy. But as of right now, I'm just not sold on him. Especially with that defense that they're running around in Chicago. They could be playing a lot of, 10-7 games, and that's not great for Allen Robinson because I think, the volume would definitely help with playing from behind a bunch. But, especially with Khalil Mack now, it's just not going to happen. But yeah, that's really the only issue I see there. But hey, if, Kenny Stills ends up becoming great, or Sammy Watkins is a really good complementary piece to Tyreek Hill, you could definitely, be fine in filling in that wide receiver 2 position, or you could just randomly find a guy on waivers. But I think Dave is the first team that only has one real hole, and that trend continues here with Gabe's. Because Gabe's, I feel like, is really missing what he's missing in his team. I basically turned this into like a roast of everyone's team, and I didn't really intend for that to be how this works out, but that's kind of what it's become. Just because I don't really want to just sit here and say like, oh, you got Luke Kuechly. Luke Kuechly, he's a great guy. He's a great player. He missed a bunch of games last year and finished 8th. But yeah, the one spot that Gabe is missing on at this point is his running back 2. Or no, I'm sorry, your wide receiver 2. Because I think between Landry and Crabtree, you already have. Well, I guess it's your wide receiver 1. Okay. All right. Your wide receiver 1's your issue. Now that I figured it out. Your wide receiver 1's the issue because what you have is 2 wide receiver 2s playing your wide receiver spots. And when I look at your bench, you have Rashard Matthews, who I'm not sure he's going to be the guy. Allen Hurns is the number 1 wide receiver in Dallas, but that's not a pass happy offense, and it also you have Malcolm Gallup coming in and trying to do good stuff. So that's a whole thing. And finally, you have Sterling Shepard, who I think is he's going to be fine, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense now, so I'm not really sold on him. So you really don't have somebody who I look at and I'm like, oh, that's a wide receiver one. Now, Jarvis Landry could prove me wrong, but I just don't think that he's the guy. I've always been really big on Jarvis Landry's whole thing in Miami is the scheme, the way that we drop plays, trying to get, Tannehill has ridiculous accuracy within 10 yards. So just give Jarvis Landry a bunch of, short routes. And yeah, he's a good route runner, but I feel like he was, helped out a lot by his, the scheme and trying to draw defenders a little bit away from him and give him a little bit of room, giving him some rubs. Just doing what you can to try to make him be the best player he could be because he is very talented. I don't think that's what's going to happen in Cleveland. If you look at the routes run in Buffalo with Tyrod did not have good short range accuracy. And I don't think that's going to translate great for Landry because if he's running a bunch of 10-yard routes, he's going to have to make some plays a lot more often with Tyrod. So I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this ends up working out for him. But I think the rest of your teams, it's good. You have good players who could end up becoming great players, and I don't know. Your team is definitely a lot of question marks on it, but there's only one spot where I'm like, oh, that's not good. And I feel, I just think it'd be really interesting to see how this team develops. Next up, we have Matt M. You know, he really suffered from the same problem as Gabe. Your wide receiver one is someone between Corey Davis, Nelson Aguilar, I guess Devin Funches. I mean, I really like, Will Fuller and Amendola as potential breakouts this year. With Amendola playing in that role that I was just talking about, where they scheme very well in Miami for short passes for the slot guy, and that is what Amendola is going to be. So I feel like it's, he sits in a really good spot. But, I mean, I'm just not sold on Davis or Aguilar just yet. Now, Davis, could have a breakout season this season. He was supposed to have it last year and didn't. But he could definitely have it this year. And Aguilar could end up becoming the guy in Philly over the next few weeks. I mean, he caught, it was like 10 passes for 50 yards or something last night. Like, in a half PPR, that's great. I mean, that's 10 points. But I don't know. I'm just not sold on one of those two being the guy. I mean, Edelman, yeah, when he comes off suspension, but you never know what Belichick's going to do with a guy coming off suspension. He might, Hogan might have become the guy by then, and then Edelman will just kind of fill in and get targets. I'm not really sure. But, I mean, that's definitely helped out a lot more than the previous two by your quarterback play with Phillip Rivers. Your top two running backs and your flex are all top 7 running backs from last season. That's ridiculous. Yes, Shady might just disappear off the face of the earth. Yes, a lot of people are down on Kareem Hunt right now, especially myself, because I just don't like the guy. I just don't see him as a special talent. But, yeah. Yeah, so, as the chat is pointing out in Slack, I'm not sold on a lot of people. That's just the way it sits right now because we're so early on in the season. There are some people who I'm very high on, some people I'm low on, but the number of players that I can look at and be like Melvin Gordon. I'm like, yeah, no, he is a top 10 running back no matter what. I do not care, rain or shine. He is that guy unless something happens. So yeah, that's just, I'm just not sold on a lot of people because there's not a lot of data yet. Week 2, I'll be like, yeah, no, these are people who, they're the guy now, and I'm gonna move ratings around a whole lot. But so for right now, that's basically where I'm sitting with that. But yeah, so I don't know what else to say. I just kind of went on a rant. At number 4, I finally put myself in. I feel like this is probably the spot that I want to be in. Um, yeah, Malcolm. I see you. I see you over there. But yeah, now I think that my wide receivers are wide receiver one, wide receiver two are crazy. I think that Adams, with the addition of Rodgers, is going to be top five. I think Hopkins, with a full year with Watson, he's going to be number one, number two at worst. Uh, I have a great defense going on, but I have a giant gaping hole at my tight end. My really honestly, my tight end is a giant gaping hole right now. That's just a fact. Um, George Kittle, he could be good, but I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to be good. I'm not sold on him. I need to get a thesaurus and look up "not sold on" somebody and find find some other ways of putting it. Maybe I should have done this more like with a script like I normally do, rather than just kind of throwing stuff at the wall at the last minute. Because I needed to get this out. Um, I wasn't working this week, that's why, so I didn't have any time to work on this stuff. But yeah, I think my running backs are going to be fine. I think one of Drake or Miller can be, a low end running back one, which again, not where you want to be, but it's fine. It's serviceable. And then the other one's going to be probably a high end running back two, so they should, balance out themselves there. And I feel like I have a ton of talent on my bench that I can definitely move up into my flex if DT ends up not becoming the guy that I thought he's going to be. I think he's going to make a resurgence this year now that he has decent quarterback play again, but I'm not going to bank on it. But yeah, so that's what's going on with all this right now. Uh, Doop boop doop boop boop boo. I'm just giving you guys mod. Don't abuse that power, please. I just modded Gabe and Malcolm. So you guys can wield that sword with reckless abandon. And, get rid of anybody who comes in here just spewing nonsense. But that's enough about my team. I can rant about it all day. It's great. Whatever. Should be number one. At number three, we have Jerry. I really like Jerry's team. I think he is one of the first teams I look at, and I cannot find a hole. Yes, Joey Bosa not playing is rough. You might have to drop, John Brown or somebody. Yeah, that sucks, but or make a deal. But I think you have the first team that I can look top to bottom, solid as a rock. And these top three, I think, depending on who you talk to, you'll get about the league. It should be 1, 2, 3 with these guys, no matter what. But just look what you have. You have Drew Brees, who should be coming with a big bounce back year this year. Actually, Malcolm, that TLDR is wrong. I actually was like, no, these are the three guys at the top who I guarantee are the top three teams. I put myself at 4 because that's the highest I could put myself without feeling bad. I don't think I helped my argument at all, but that's how that works. So you have that. Your running back one is a probably top 7 guy, and that's exactly where you want to be. Alex Collins, a lot of people are saying he's doing really, really great. I'm not sold on him, but then again, I think he is more of a workload guy rather than a talent guy. If in the NFL, if you were literally drafting a fantasy team to have play against a different fantasy team, Alex Collins would be a lot lower on the list. But I think Alex Collins, because of what he's going to get every single week, touch-wise, I think he's fine there. Then you have Allen and Baldwin. Again, those are two great players. Jimmy Graham, who, if he ends up becoming, the red zone target for Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers is going to throw 40 touchdowns, so he's going to get, 7, 8, 9 of them, so he's going to be all set. Golden Tate, I think, is my pick of the Detroit wide receivers to be great, so that's why I like him there. And then you also have, Aaron Jones, who when he comes back from suspension, I think he's the most talented Green Bay running back, so you might have to wait a little bit on him. But I think once he comes back, I think he's going to be eventually beat Jamal Williams for the job. Um, yeah. Let me show you. Gabe's, you were number 6. So, yeah. I see you over there in chat asking where you are. You're number 6. Not number 2, sorry. I think the top 3, everyone should really be able to see what's happening. And yeah, for the critique, just to give you a quick rundown, I don't like Landry, and I explain it over the course of several minutes because as a Dolphins fan, there it is. So yeah. And that's basically my feelings on Jerry's team and the next 2 as well. I'm just gonna look at them and just say, man, they're just solid through and through. Number 2 is Mike. Now, the issue with Mike's team is it's solid, but my God, can it go up in a blaze of glory? If you get Deshaun Watson, the guy who's not great, yeah, that's gonna be bad for you. If you get the Joe Mixon from last season, who, the second half of the year was fine. He was a running back 2 most weeks. That's not great. If you get the Marshawn Lynch, who's like, this is my farewell tour. I'm not going to work that hard. That's why they brought in Doug Martin. Then you're splitting work with a two-headed giant. The 2 wide receivers and Gronk, the 2 wide receivers are fine. I don't see any issues with them. But then you have Gronk, who it's like, well, he's still Gronk. If he ends up going down, then that's a huge hole in your lineup now. And then you have at your flex a ton of players who I think are, serviceable at a flex position. So for Mike, if all of his players hit, and I think you can say it's for any fantasy team, but especially with his ceiling I think is higher than any other team in the league, but his floor is right down there with most people's floors, if not lower. So it's a spooky team, but it's a team that if it ends up working out, then man, that's going to be crazy, and it's going to be a team that people are going to look at and go at the end of the season, damn, that's just crazy. And then finally, we arrive at James, the number 1. I'm as surprised as everybody else is, but personally, I not only can I not find like a gap in his lineup, I can't find a way to argue against, like, I just can't find a hole in his lineup, or if I take any player out, finding a hole there either. Like, it's crazy. Like, I don't know. I'm just in love with this team. I think it's a beautiful masterpiece of pre-week 1 work. He could definitely just be trash. Every team has that option. So, but yeah, I'm just a big fan of James' team this year. I mean, Cam could be a top 5 guy, especially when you're only 4 points per passing touchdown here in this league. That means Cam is able to run around and just, run in and gain you an extra 2 points than you would have got otherwise. Kamara gets those couple weeks of a head start, and if he can really lock down that job and use Ingram partway, then he's got that. Derrick Henry, we've all seen what he can do in partial time. What he can do in full time is going to be crazy. If he gets DeMarco Murray's workload from last year, Green and Hill and Schuster, I mean, those are 3 guys who you look at and you're like, yeah, no, they're going to put up really big points. And then you look down at the bench and you say, oh, who do we have down here? We have Rex Burkhead, who is probably going to be the starting running back from England for a couple weeks. Bilal Powell, who's going to be catching a lot of passes. Ty Montgomery catching a lot of passes. Alshon Jeffrey, when he comes back, he could be a really good talent, considering last year he was top 20, and this year I think that offense is going to be even better. And then you have Keenan Cole, who's sitting there as a lottery ticket. I mean, Jacksonville needs to throw the ball to somebody, and I think he's definitely one of those guys who could be the receiver of it all. So, but yeah, no, I'm just, I'm just a big fan of James's team this year, and I think that he's got a lot going for him. But really, those top 3 maybe you could argue James Jerry 1 and 2, and then put the Garbage Rocket at 3, just because it's so spooky. Um, but yeah, no, I'm definitely a big fan of teams in this order, and that's gonna be it for me. Um, yeah, that's basically it. I see you guys chatting about it in Slack, and I can't wait to hear you guys rage at me later. Feel free to at me and just be like, "Hey, your hot takes are garbage." I'll be like, "Yeah, I know, but I'm the guy giving hot takes, so deal with it." Um, oh, okay. So here's how that works, Malcolm. So his question is, how can Tyreek Hill be a top 10 wide receiver if Patrick Mahomes is garbage? Um, have you seen um, Jay Cutler from last season? Did you see him play last year? He was not a good quarterback, but he had a guy on his team who got a lot of points and did really well. So that's my rebuttal. I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes is Jay Cutler, because I feel like Patrick Mahomes actually wants to be in the NFL and actually is going to put effort towards it. But yeah, no, I feel like that's my answer to that. So yeah, I'm not sure what else is being talked about in Slack, or if I missed something. Um, oh wow, you went. There was a lot of garbage being talked about. All right, so I think that's going to be it for me for right now. Um, yeah, so I'll see you guys later. Hopefully you enjoyed this. My takes are going to not be as hot going forward because I'm going to have some kind of data, be able to look at the film and be like, oh my god, this guy's actually really good. Like, what's up with that? Um, but yeah, and yeah, okay, Malcolm, I will concede. Hill and Landry are different. They're very different players, but I feel like Mahomes is only going to have the production this season to support one wide receiver um, with most of his, passes. Uh, and that's why I have Hill being high, because I think Hill's going to get most of those touches. Where I think Mahomes is so low because, if most of his touches go to Hill and Kelsey is going to get his too. I mean, I still think he's going to be top 3, but I don't know. I feel like once those two are expended, then he's just going to have nothing left for anybody else. It's just going to be garbage. And I think he's going to throw his fair amount of interceptions and stuff like that. So that's why I have that feeling. And yeah, it's hard to resolve those two together. But yeah, that's just my feelings. So yeah, I'll see you guys later, and hopefully y'all enjoyed this. If you're watching right now, that's awesome. Thanks for coming out to the stream. And if you're not in the stream and you just want to hang out in YouTube and on Slack and everything like that, then yeah. Or did I say Steam? I meant Twitch. That was weird. But yeah, so I'm just ranting at the end because I don't want to cut anything off the end. So bye.